So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts from the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu chapter 1:8, then we understand the cities returning and the first holy city on the land of Cush as precisely per the instructions of the prophet Yeshayahu. And then Daniel the prophet, chapter 11, explains the many aspects of the relationship with the kingdom of the east, north, and south. Most importantly came out few articles related with the economical situation of the northern kingdom and the importance of China instituting then the virtual monetary system, so then they can combine with the Chinese system Alibaba, so then the new system can be completely then placed into action. Let's then evaluate what's going on with then the northern kingdom. The ruble is unfortunately devaluing and the sanctions are becoming more prominent. There are a few aspects we should then study as far as what Daniel has told us in the 12th chapter, where then knowledge would increase for the purposes of trade. The time is very sensitive at the moment because we find in NATO obviously adjusting itself, making more improvements, and then the stronger influence of these organization on the eastern side of the Soviet Union. As we understand, the prophecies are explaining then the northern kingdom then later coming with much equipment and must become greater than the former status. So time is very crucial. But since then the West is involved in many war fronts in the Mid-East, it is imperative for China then become more active as far as coming up with a virtual system, a monetary system of yen, but in a virtual form only linked with the Bank of China. So then this gives then the world a chance of having a choice of either being in a place where the usage of USD then is mandatory versus then the option of doing trade directly with China. As nations, they are trying at any cost to maintain the 1,000 years of deceit or extending it. Then the nations, they have the choice of having the Chinese virtual system, so then each person having some sort of a money can hide behind and then can avoid inflation. So let's then organize the system in a way where then people can obviously make more for their money. In many places the inflation is taking place very strongly and people simply do not have as much economical power to make purchase and then do trade. China is then making lots of deals with Germany, the head of the European Union, and then this should obviously give more trade, so then China can expand itself even further. As we read in the earlier section of the 11th chapter of Daniel, then the kingdom of the east would extend itself in the four corners of the earth. Thus we understand why China must become then the interlink from nation to nation, so then people can buy Chinese virtual money and then do trade in the system. This should then obviously push forward for reforms and then giving China more prospects of having other nations linked up with them. As far as we can understand, also the 11th chapter of Daniel gives us a few aspects of the kingdom of the south. There is a section related with tabernacling on the land of Cush. And then the holy instructions are then given us important specific Hebrew words related with the relationship amongst these nations. The development of the kingdom of the south based from the Holy Hebrew language of Daniel gives us a few aspects of each section related with this topic. Firstly then, for instance, Negev, or then parched land, in any section related with the southern side of Israel, as far as we can understand, tabernacling from the prospect of a Hebrew should be only in Jerusalem. And then since the time of Daniel and Yeshayahu, then the prophecies are then observed from Jerusalem. So any portion of the southern side, it is obviously related with the southern kingdom, or then the parched land south from Jerusalem. Then other sections, for instance the word 5024 of the Holy Hebrew language lexicon, you find a bit of a variation when then goes south side of Egypt, beyond Egypt on the southern side. And then the word changes, because then is the southern portion of this specific place of Egypt, as far as the starting of the relationship then with the southern kingdom. There is another section related with the Congo, the sons of the violent ones then making a move for the establishment of the vision. So understanding the kingdom of the south has taken another turn, because at first we were explaining areas of the kingdom of the south and economical understanding, where then the sons of the violent ones beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, then they have also a place. Thus then the kingdom of the south as an economical power. But then it has the economical power understanding, then the kingdom of the south as Egypt. And there is a very specific place, in fact, the whole understanding of the development of events from the kingdom of the south, and then tabernacling, and then the violent ones, they are interlinked. However, reading from the original Hebrew, there are some specific words that should be used to understand then the parched land versus then the southern portion of Egypt and beyond. We should this obviously read, and absolutely certainly does not change the prophecies of Yeshayahu the prophet, because they must be consistent. And thus far they are, because we are talking then with a relation of Gentiles, then related with the violent ones and the economy of the southern kingdom, explaining beyond the rivers of Ethiopia as the violent ones, versus then the southern kingdom, explaining then the sons of Ishmael. Thus then uniting the sticks of Ezekiel the 37th chapter. Of the first son, Ishmael, he was a king. He was then the son of Ibrahim and an Egyptian mate named Hagar. Thus then the sons of Ishmael came from this relationship. And then much later came then the second son, Yitzhak. Then the sons of tabernacling. Then establishing the vision is then pushed forward by the sons of the violent ones beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, while then there is a few skirmishes going on with Egypt and the Islamic State. This truly is presenting itself the 11th chapter of Daniel and the 10th verse. Thus the relationship of the starting of this relationship of then the sons of Ishmael in Egypt. Understandably, Egypt is one of the oldest civilizations as we know of. So starting then a relationship, but understandably the word then for south, from the lexicon you find the 24 verses 84-86. And these, they are not interchangeable. The Hebrews are very specific with the words, and each word then they have a specific meaning, and we should maintain this integrity when we read this section. Obviously, we were dealing with thousands of years ago, and then from the perspective of the Hebrew people, understandably later they would never imagine would have tabernacling outside of Jerusalem. So they have a very important focus upon Jerusalem because this was the place from where the promises came from. But then, when you understand it from the Gentile perspective, it was not given as much refinement because it was not related directly with the tabernacling. That's why sometimes the translation came with a slightly distinct word. So the 24 verses 84-86 are not interchangeable. But then later on I'm going to understand these because it's fairly simple. It's only localizing these words and then understanding the sequence of events. And they do not change from the prophet Yeshayahu. So it is straightened out, mostly, only requires then a bit of refinement. But thus far we understand Egypt has a huge portion in the starting of this relationship with the kingdom of the south and the sons of Ishmael. Later on I'm going to speak more about it. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.